Hood postman, city, hood, click. Let's go.
Be very careful who you talk to, because you'll never know who the informant is, who the cooperating witness may be, and you never know, somebody who was a friend today may have been flipped the night before and become your enemy tomorrow.
About humanity, putting truth in these lies, while they busy feeding lies. When you got that tunnel vision, gotta open up your eyes. Wake up and go to sleep. Man, I'm praying all times. And to my guys, ain't no other side. This for my brothers, I'ma pray with y'all shine. Lock the door. Go ahead, lock the door. Lock the door. Go ahead, lock the door. Yeah, you already know.
Depending on the lessons, some people eat, some people learn. But the game is gonna send you big. Lock the door.
Lock the door. Shout out to the Mailroom Nation and the Mailroom Goons. I am Professor Melly Mel, your hood postman. Be sure to click that notification bell, like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment down below so when this dope content hit, it's going to feel like it's the first in the 15th. Welcome to the mailroom. When you come in, take a look at your mind, examine what's in your heart. Before they had handguns, they had handguards. Man up. You can go anywhere in the world to get a couple of lies. You come right here to get the truth. This is not a glorification nor a glamorization. It's always an education. Get on the bus and let me take you to school. I am your bus driver. If you ring that bell, I'm going to bring the mail. Shout out to everybody there. Shout out to Henry. Shout out to John. Shout out to everybody in there, man. Johnny Sullivan, Alexis, Kay, Marlena Wynn, Postmaster General in the house. Brian, what's going on? Recorders LLC, you in Ace Hood. What's going on, my guy? Yashua, the young guy, is in the house today. Appreciate each and every last one of you. It's been amazing. It's been incredible. And it's always, as usual, we about to turn up the heat because we're going to get into some history today. I generally like talking about the history, but sometimes I get off into other areas, but I'm always coming back to it because I want the younger generation to understand how important this history is. Because if you know your history, then you know you won't have to repeat it. You can do something different. You can be something different. You can be something other than what everybody else did. But I want you guys to pay really, really close. And once again, if you want, you got a question, please super chat it, man. Because I'm about to cook today. So please don't interrupt me with no frivolous questions. If you want a question answered, super chat it and we'll look right at it, get it up. Always know this, guys. When you fighting monsters, be careful you don't become one. That is the wisdom of the day. When you fighting monsters, be careful you don't become one. Today we're talking about Oaks Park, Businessman, Red House, Midtown, and Lynnwood Crips in 1973 when the big meeting happened and everybody met up in Oaks Park and everybody was coming up there. People was getting put on. This was like a particularly busy day. There was put-ons. There was people coming up and figuring if they had the metal or the testicular fortitude or just the metal itself to be a Crip. This was that day they was finding out. And all was in attendance. I'm talking about Tookie. Let me go through the roll call first. We're gonna say Tookie, Killer Carl. We're gonna say Tiny Man. We're gonna say Weasel. We're gonna say Little Cross. We're gonna get into let's see, Little Cross, Blackie was there, Monkey Man was there, Weasel, Shotgun, Tiny Man. I give you all those guys, right? And now we're gonna get to some of the Lynnwood Crips that were there. There was Peabody, there was Shorty, there was Duck, there was Black Ass Andrew, the Gary Stewart, Tweety Bird at the time was a Lynnwood Crip before he came Santana, right? And then you had the Midtown, Killer Wayne, Killer Bray, New York, Heavyhead, Penright, Turtle. No, I don't think Turtle was there at that time. He wasn't there. He wasn't there because he had figured it out yet. I don't believe. I ain't gonna put him where he wasn't at. I'm leaving him out of that. But I'm talking about the heavy hitters now, the big guy. At that time, we was considered, me, Turtle, and the Bebops and the Gangsters, all, we was considered the YNs. What they like to call it, what y'all call them today, the YNs. Y'all know what that means. Don't mind me just watching. Everybody I named, right? All these people, because you got Donald Duck Nullwood, you got Frog, you got Hercules, you got Big Roy Scott, you got Gavin the Governor, you got Snake, you got Chili Pimp, you got all these guys, right? You got Stevie Wonder, Donnie Wayne, JD, let's see, Big Blue, you got JJ, Johnny Jones, you got all these cats. I'm talking about, man, and I can't name them all. I'm just giving y'all some names to factor in what I'm about to tell you. It's anywhere from 200, 300 dudes in the park. And then that's not even counting when the Grandies and all these other people, this was a big deal. This was a big deal because, see, why we get to this part right here is because of what happened with the Pyrus. The Pyrus originally started on Pyru Street. They were the Pyru Street Boys. Pyru run from Willowbrook all the way to Avalon across to the 135. So it run through Fruittown, it run through the west side, and it run to 135's Pyru. That's what Pyru Street is, right? So those guys was definitely, quote unquote, what you refer to Pyru Street Boys, right? But Fruittown was Fruittown and 135 was 135. As you get into why Luda's Park, because here's the thing. It was Icky Dawson that introduced Ray Johnson, Herman Jr., Bojangles, Big Jeffrey, and all the rest of them to Baba Louie, LB, Lil Vince, and a host of other the West Side Pyrus. And it was through that connection that he had with them, and I think it happened in YA, that they was able to make that connection. But because at that time, the West Side was fighting against the Carver Parks and the Grandies. But they were overwhelmed by them because the numbers, because the Grandies and the Carver Park at that time, during that time, guys, the Crips were Voltron and Autobot up. You could summons the West Side and the East Side that, hey, man, it's going down. We finna get down. Because the Crips was about fighting back then. They was fighters. They wasn't shooters yet. They was fighters. So, but you can bring the whole West Side, the whole East Side, and the Grandies and the Carver Parks to wherever's happening at. And the Pyru boys was like, wait a minute, man, we got to figure something, because the numbers is too overwhelming. And at that time, the term blood was not created for them to have the nucleus to Voltron up with the bounty hunters, the swans, the brims, and the outlaws, and everybody else, and the bishops, and everybody else in the Afton Park, and the Cook Street and Jarvis Street, everybody else that wasn't part of that jail. It took that term blood to nucleus, to make the nucleus for them to be part of become anti-Crip, because they was already anti-Crip, but they hadn't joined together. So the Pyrus was basically fighting on the front that they couldn't really necessarily say. So it was the East Side Pyrus. When they took up the Pyrus, they had to change it to Rue Gang. The Pyru Gang. Now it's the Pyru Gang, the Rue Gang, and then after that it became the U and the Rue. The U and the Rue represent the U.S. boys and the Pyru. So they clicked up, right? So that made them stronger. That made them deeper. But it was that darn pudding. It was that pudding right there. That Sylvester Scott. Man, that man was showing up everywhere. Just letting it go. He didn't have, I think it became like a cigarette habit to him. Because once he started letting it go, he couldn't stop letting it go. He was just showing up everywhere, letting it go, right? And at that point, that's when it really, everything started to really turn, and everybody realized that, hey, they don't want to fight, they want to shoot. So that particular incident, when that started happening, that's where you get all this back and forth. So we in the park. We in Oaks Park. And during that time, they had what was known as Park Patrol. You see the title, Oaks Park Red House, Midtown, Lynnwood Crips chased the Park Patrol out of the park at the big Crip meeting in Oaks Park. And during that time, Bartender was trying to negotiate or navigate his way into it, because Bartender grew up in the neighborhood. He was part of the Oaks Park boys, right? He was never a Crip, but he was over there. He grew up with Lug and Jug, Lil George. They all lived over there. They all lived it. Then they had the Blackstone Pyrus, was Tony Washington, Dwayne Ivory, Bill Ivory, and Lil Raymond lived down the street. They was all part of that, right? When Bartender was trying to get, because here's the thing, Oaks Park and Midtown changed Rosecrans, changed the dynamics. It was no longer, you could call it, whatever they was calling it at the time, but it was Oaks Park and Midtown that changed Rosecrans, because anywhere from Avalon all the way back down to Paramount, it was just all Pyru. And the only Crip set was those two. And then later on, it became Santana, which what they figure out together, it was stronger, and it made a bigger impact if we come together. There's strength in numbers, right? So why be two separate entities when we could just create one entity? And that was Bullet. Bullet took the Ultimate Santana off the Carlos Santana album and said, man, we finna be Santana. That's how, and after his death and Boo Boo death is what caused everybody to step down for whatever they was claiming and start. So, okay, everybody's in agreement, whether it's Turtle, whether it's Gangster, whether it's me, whether it's Killer Raider, whether it's Yo, whether it's Boo Boo. Boo Boo lost his life, of course, Bay Rob, and so on and so forth. Big Jones, E. Pep, whatever. All these guys was around. Bebop. They all came together. We all concluded that, hey, we all finna rock Santana. And it was in those streets, the Rose, the Willows, the Springs, the MacDibbs, the Pecks, the Elms, the Palmers, the Pine Streets that put the fire in Santana, put the fire in it. But anyway, we'll get back to the story. So we in the park. Park Patrol rolls up. They rolls up. And they see all these Negroes in the park. At this time, law enforcement, it was such a new thing to them, because you got to understand, the Crips control Oaks Park, they control Mona Park, they control Carver Park, they control all the parks, Jesse Owens Park, St. Andrews Park, and particularly wherever was happening, that's where they show up. And then on the weekend, everybody would go up to Centinela Park, which is, I believe, Inglewood family neighborhood now. I'm not for sure, one of them blood neighborhoods. But back then, all the Crips went up there to play football on the weekend. There was no Bloods up there, because the Inglewood family and the Chain Gang and all them people hadn't figured out what their position was or how they was going to play this, right? They hadn't played. It wasn't until, I think when A-Bay got down, I think that's when things started changing for them, when they lost A-Bay. But anyway, that's another story. So you're coming back to the park, Oaks Park. You got all these individuals in there, and the park patrol try to swoop up. Man, man, they almost tore the people out the frame. People they couldn't waste no time getting up out that park, trying to come, because at this time, the younger generations were very defiant. They was pro-black, of course, at the time, but in a way, it was like they was trying to be pro-black. They was trying to identify with something, but didn't rightfully know how to necessarily identify. Because now, if you can't be pro-black, and if you're gonna be fighting these other guys across who has a difference of opinion about what they stand for and what you stand for, but it was people like Curtis Patrick, Donald Prescott, and a few other homies that were Pyrus at first, right? Along with Bartender. Bartender stayed at Pyru, they did not. And it was Curtis Patrick who actually changed the dynamics, because Killer Carl, Duck, and JJ had the first murder at Whaley. They went to, and this is how Duck then wound up in Factor Brookings, was how they met Tookie, Buddha, Monkey Man, Bogart, let's see, who else? Warlock and all the other ones that they met up there, right? At Factor Brookings. So that relationship started there. So it was like, man, is this crazy? Because they're in Factor Brookings and Banning, they get kicked out of Banning because the city of Banning didn't want them there anymore. So they was no longer allowed there. They get kicked out of Banning and wind up in Compton on Pine Street, which is around the corner from Oaks Park, which is the Red House, that big barn house that everybody referred to the Red House, because at the time it was the red. It was big old barn, big old red looking house. But at that time, people wasn't tripping on colors as they did in the 80s. The color things started changing around about 75, 76. But early 70s, it wasn't even a big deal. It wasn't a big issue. It wasn't even nothing to be seen. Like my homie name is Bebop. Today, you wouldn't see that. He'll be named C-Bop. Like today, you'll see there was no Pyrus calling itself Loco and all that. Back then, they would say it, So again, things change. People choose to be, change the dynamics or change the wording or change the conversation, and it gets changed in that dynamic, right? So we coming back to Curtis, right? And this is what initiated the actual war between Oaks Park and Ludus Park. Because prior to then, because the Pyrus would have had a clean sweep had they had been able to make that happen, because they already got Ludus Park. But what if Oaks Park and Midtown would have said, okay, we all on Rosecrans, let's all be. What if that would have happened? That would have been a very different dynamic right there. Trust me, it would have been. But it didn't happen that way because of Doug Hercules, Robert Thomas, Darnell Miles. I forgot my boy D-Shot, Derek Chenier, Boo Hodges, Thunderbird, Frankie, Killer Mac, and a host of others. I can't name them all. But anyway, so when that didn't happen like that, now you got a bunch of guys who's like my neighborhood, where my neighborhood sit and where the Pyrus sit, that was like the closest neighborhood if you had an opposition or what you call ops now, of enemigos or whatever, however you choose to frame it. We were like right there. That was like the DMZ. That was the DMZ right there. That was that zone, that line, that war, where war can take place. You got them on one side and you got us on one side, right? There were no other Crip neighborhoods, not until later on, that had that close proximity to the Pyrus like Oaks Park did, because we was right there. And then you had the Lynnwood Crips who were on our backside, right? So when they came together, the Red House, the Midtowns, and the Lynnwood Crips and the Oaks Park, now you got a force. Now you got about 50, 60 guys walking up to Market Basket, Savons, Pet Boys, Sears and Roebuck, JJ Newberries. I'm talking about super deep. Now not just going up there, but walking up there, which is at that time was Piru neighborhood. Piru got a problem with that. They ain't just finna sit back and let this keep happening. So, you know, you got this big old dude, man, with this big old tookie with these bib overhauls on and big back comeback boots, got the ace deuce pulled down and ride, you know. So this is when Puddin started hopping out. But back then, we wasn't manipulated like they are today. What we did was provide support. I'm talking about the YNs, younger homies. We provided support because whereas our big homies couldn't get in certain places or do break-ins and burglaries and stuff, we were so little and tiny, we can squeeze in any way with breaking the houses. We got more guns than they got. And we would get guns and help them out, you know what I mean? And because they wouldn't let us go busing with them. You know, you had, I don't know what the age, it wasn't an age requirement, but I think it was more or less of how you carried yourself, or was you manly enough, or was you down enough, you know what I mean? Or there was something about you that was extraordinary than just a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid. You couldn't just be that and then hang out with 17, 18, 19-year-old dudes. They were almost men, right? So they wasn't letting it happen like that. So a lot of us, we know how to steal cars, we know how to break in houses and stuff. I learned how to do roof jobs with what's his name? The guys out of Bounty Hunters. What's their name? Oh, Pancho and Ruben. Pancho and Ruben Tillman from the Bounty Hunters. Yeah. Yeah, they was my cousin, my homie Wing Dog, they was his relatives, and they used to come over there, and they used to, man, them dudes can get through a roof and get into the liquor store, or business, anything, and steal it blind. So that's how we supported our bigger homies. And even when they would, you know, get into it with these dudes, they would occasionally take our bicycles or not take them. They asked us for our 10 speeds, or, you know, because everybody didn't have a car back then. Back then, dudes was rolling Chevys and different buckets and stuff. Then nobody had no new cars. We talking about the early 70s. This is pre bicentennial, before the bicentennial Crips started. So the bicentennial Crips changed everything. That was a whole different era right there. But I'm talking about 72, 73, 74, 70. So it ain't a lot of people that can speak on that era in terms of way I can speak on it. And I can speak on it in a way I can go like really, really deep on it. But at the same time, I don't want to get too deep because at the same time, this is supposed to be an education, right? This is not supposed to be no glorification or anything that, right? So if I'm trying to educate, I'm trying to demonstrate how we should be better, or we shouldn't be stooped in this to this day. We should be striving to be more than just that. We already been through that. That's already been covered. You know, Killer Carl was 10 times. What you guys knew what Rebo is, Killer Carl was 10 times that. You know, and it ain't nothing but Rebo was a down dude. But if y'all had met Killer Carl in 72 cents, come on, man. You don't know. And then JJ, Johnny Jones, the same thing. All these dudes was hitters, man. They was the real McCoy. They was fighters, bro. They was fighters. They wasn't just, you know, jacking off no shots like that. But it was, you know, and then they made it clear. I remember when Tookie used to just ride through the neighborhood and jump out and be talking and, you know, seeing where your head was at and stuff, ask you a couple of questions, and you know, he would check on, you know, he was just being a big homie. He was never a bully, Just always trying to see where the strength was at and who was with it and who wasn't with it, you know. Just like when he told Big Judy to go home, do he figure out if he a Crip or not? Yeah, Big Judy came to the red house. Big Judy, hurry up, ran out of there. But Big Judy came back and said, man, I'm gonna be just like him. Big Judy went and got swole and buffed that on, and Big Judy from Lynnwood. But yeah, but the Lynnwood Crips, the Red House Crips, the Midtown Crips, in the Oaks Park businessman were in the park on a daily, daily activity. In park and recreation, the park patrol, they had to dissolve the park patrol because they had no say so. They couldn't control it, man. We was breaking into the snack bar, growing up the market basket, shopping for free, coming back, cutting on the grills, putting burgers and dogs on it there, potato chips and juice and all that different stuff. I mean, you know, to us, we was having fun, you know. But at the same time, again, you don't fight the monsters. Be careful. When you fight monsters, be careful that you don't become one. And that's just the moral of that story. A lot of us became monsters. I remember when it got real critical. It's when my homie Bebop broke into a pawn shop and got all the guns. All the guns. The Compton PD was so worried. By this time, we Santana. The Compton PD was so worried about that. And I don't know how they found out that we was all at Pat's house. Was Bebop Girl at the time. Me, Bebop, Sleep, Turtle, 80 Gangster, Kizzy, just a all-American, Bad Habit, gang of us. We all had 2 and 3 pistols. Bebop gave us everybody their own guns. Everybody had, we had 45s, 9mm, 38s. We had rifles. We had shotguns. We had everything because he cleaned it out. And we sitting there plotting what we finna do, man. And they raided us. They raided us. We tried to hide guns everywhere, man. The police found all them damn guns. And they took the homie Bebop to jail. I don't know how they knew that, man. But that right to this day, that's always puzzled me. How did they know? How did they find out? Because Bebop wasn't that type of person. He didn't go around and tell. He just gathered all the homies that he felt, you know, was down with it and brought them in. But again, let me come back up a little bit about Curtis Patrick. Curtis Patrick was originally a Pyru, Ludus Park Pyru. And when Duck and them came home, Hercules, Duck, Rob, and Darnell, and JD, and Gary the Governor, they all was cripping. So Curtis lived on MacDivitt, across the street from Mr. Hicks, who was Compton PD. Next door to him was Billy St. Julius, Wally St. Julius, and I can't remember their older brother name. They all stayed next door, right next to each other. And Billy and them moved. And then it was Curtis was right there. So Curtis turned. So by Curtis becoming a Crip, that created a problem. That created a rip within the Pyru gang because he was like right there with Herman and Ray Johnson and Icky and Bojangles and Big Jeffrey and all the top Pyru, Volcano and Savage and Jimmy Butler. He was right there with them, you know, the top Pyrus of Ludus Park. Again, I'll tell anybody, it's the Ludus Park Pyrus was the one that put the fire in the cannon. If there's fire in the hole, they put the fire in the cannon. So let me make sure I ain't missing nothing. Are you doing okay? Good. So they put the fire in the cannon. Shout out to Keith. When that happened, Curtis' sister got into it with Ray's sister. And what happened, Ray left his house, went to a party, I think it was on Queensdale, and Curtis was there. And by that time, they had already been hearing the rumors that, you know, Curtis don't flip, you know. So now it's already animosity building. Now this don't happen. You got his sister and his sister don't got into it. Now he gives Ray the opportunity to confront Curtis. And when he confronted him, he stabbed him. Curtis stabbed him, and Ray lost his life in that situation. Man, rest in peace to him, man. I used to see him, man. I could tell when I saw Ray, it wasn't no question in my mind that I knew that he was in charge. I knew that he was, he was like the leader of Pyru #1 over there. You could just look at him and see, You know, he was a kind of tall, slender, dark-skinned brother. Wore that two-tone leather jacket with the Levi's. You know, and you could tell he had them handles too. He wasn't nobody to play with. So when that happened, that kicked that off. That just blew everything out of proportion. But it would be years. It would be like, so that happened like 72, 73, 73. We'll say 73, 73, 74, 81, 82. I got a spot over there. Me, and I ain't gonna say their names. I'm just gonna say me. We got a spot down the street from the Compton Police Department, right? And we had scanners and everything. So I'm sitting there listening to the scanner, and I hear him saying that a guy done barricaded himself in the house. I said, barricaded himself? What is going on? So I'm listening, and they trying to plead with him to come out. And what happened, it was like Curtis had shot his girl, I think her name was Portia at the time. I think he shot her sister, and he thought he killed her. And by him, because they was all, by that time, they were smoking an angel dust or water, whatever. And he thought he took her life. And then in return, instead of just facing those consequences, he shot himself and eliminated himself. And that's how, so I'm just telling you, everything I just told you is facts. It's nothing fabricated or not exaggerated or nothing like that. I'm just going through the cycle. It's my observation, my observation of that reality. I want to frame it that way because, and I think that younger people that listen to these stories, they can learn a lot from them, and they can learn what not to do because there's nothing new under the sun. This stuff it should have been changed. It should have been cut off. It should have been done long ago. I don't know. I haven't seen Wino, Peabody, Tonell, Duck, Shorty, Andrew, Gary Stewart, Tweety Bird, rest in peace. Even if you go back to Tookie, Duck, Chili Pimp, Snake, all the people, JJ, they all rest in peace now. Robert Thomas, rest in peace. Only ones that living are Darnell Miles, JD still living. Let's see, who else? I think Frankie's still living. Killer Carl still living. But all them people, man, Hercules, he's still living, but mostly all of them on both sides. And not necessarily through gangbanging or nothing like that. Some through gangbanging, though. Some through gangbanging, but just gone because they mentally abused themselves, physically abused themselves, and they didn't take care of themselves in a way because when you're young, you don't think about becoming old. You don't factor in how that's going to impact or affect your daily activity or whether you're going to have movement or whether you're going to be able to do this or do that. You don't think about that. Back then, people were drinking that Diamond Red and Silver Satin and MD 2020 like it was going out of style. Bitter Dog Bruno's still around right to this day, and he's still doing it, by the grace of God, I guess. But he was right there, Bitter Dog Bruno is from the first resurrection of Crips, and I'm right behind him, I was there instrumental, and when he came riding up, him, Half Pine Bruno, LC, I can't think his name. But anyway, they came riding up on bicycles, and bartender happened to be in the park with us, and he come out because occasionally we were going partying, fire some commercial weed and drink a couple of bottles of wine with bartender. Just because the bigger homies had a problem with it. The next generation, we didn't have a problem with. We love bartender, because he would get us weed and drink. How we gonna cut that connection off? Right? So we would occasionally be in the park, getting there, doing our thing, getting high, whatever. And Bruno now, Baby Roscoe is what I was trying to think about. Baby Roscoe in a cartoon, yeah. They jammed him, right? and I had to step in. Bruno pulled out that goddamn it, and I had to get between him and bartender. You know, right today he talk about that. Maybe one day I'll get him on and he can explain it to you. Maybe he can explain it better than I can. But yeah, those situations was happening. But the thing about it, guys, is that all these people that I'm naming, they somehow went to school together, or they was, you know, that one dude might be going with a Pyru, one girl might be going with a Pyru, and her sister might be going with a Crip. Crazy stuff like that. So Crips and Bloods would meet up at the same girl's house, you know. All of this happened all the time, you know. Baba Louie baby mama lived in Front Hood, you know. Shout out to the Front Hoods. You know, the Pet Bulls, the John Washingtons, the Fairies, and all those guys over there, you know. It's just, man, at some point, we got to be exhausted. How can we not be exhausted at this point? How do we continue to do this, expect a different result? When year after year after year after year, we don't see with the results and the outcomes and the impact of this on our community, the greater community. We don't see it, you know, and all I could do is come on and try to talk about it in a way that doesn't incriminate or doesn't frame it in a way somebody get in trouble, because we see that's happening on the internet because people don't know how to talk or speak on the internet. You know, they want to, you know, it's not braggadocious. I'm not being boastful or braggadocious or anything like that. I'm not putting on this big old macho-ism to where I got to be the biggest voice on the internet and all that. I haven't heard the song, yeah, sure, but I seen here the feedback. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, you know, and it's unfortunate, but that was just the way it is. And then back then, like I say, man, the Crips were Autobot and Voltron up. If Compton, somebody had a problem with Compton, Crips in Compton, it wasn't nothing for you to see the East Side. So it was Raymond. Actually, it was Mac Thomas that changed all that, because Raymond was willing to embrace the Pyru Street Boys because of his relationship with Baba Louie. And Raymond was trying to recruit everybody into being Crips. He didn't want nobody to be nothing else. Now, if you decide to do that, then yeah, he came to fight you. He will show up to fight. That's how Raymond was. But Mac Thomas didn't like them, period. Mac Thomas did not like them. Wasn't having it. Said, nope, we're not doing that. And that. So, and then when you think about Putin's brothers, Sockeye and Bodacious, they were Bonaparte Crips over there with Dinosaur and Alvin Whiteside and them, you know. They became Pyru Street, Pyru Boys, Rue Boy, Rue Gang, and You and the Rue and all that stuff, you know. It don't took some transitions and stuff, but I never remember the Pyrus ever having a burgundy rag. They always had a red rag. So I think the youngsters changed that dynamic. But they started off with the red. They had the red rag, they had the auburn patch, and they had the little dye to turn your hair gold or blonde looking right there. They had that, and they had the Levi's. They dressed, when you saw them, they looked just like Crips, because there was nothing else for the identity of gangbanging and all that came from the Crips, that style, right? But then the Pyrus to have their own identity, they start tweaking it and doing different things to make it different, right? Gerald, what's going on? Rude Dog, what's happening, man? Man, I talked about you yesterday, Rude Dog. AZ Majestics, the M, the president of the AG Majestics, man. I talked about Gangsta Car yesterday, Rude Dog. Good to see you, man. Appreciate you. I'm just giving us history on all this, how all this stuff got twisted around. So yeah, when you look at that and you think about, how did I go to school with some dudes in the elementary and junior high, and then the 8th grade, I'm mad at them? because they they wanted to be something different. That was crazy. I remember going to school. Me, Big Mac, Sugar Bear, CB, Crazy Bob. It was always us four together, and we hung out at school together. I remember they just like looked at us and say, "Oh yeah, y'all Crips." Oh yeah, yeah, y'all Crips. Okay, we kind of let that roll around our head a little bit. But then after they kept saying it, they say because we rode the bus, we Crips. At the time, we just like, okay, we must be Crips then. They keep saying it, they keep coming at us. What was we to do? So that's how a lot of that got happened. It's just environment and people pressure and different people initiating things and saying things and coming at you in a particular way. You want to feel protected, so you join up or whatever they saying they did, and then that way you got those guys support. Like again, I tell you, we was the younger guys, we were more like supporting roles. We wasn't in the official roles of doing what the bigger guys was doing, because they was again 18, 19, 17, maybe 16. But then there was always like my homie Yo was a man child. Yo, same age as me, but he was huge. He was big. He was fighting grown men. Shit, 14 years old, But he was huge. He was just a big guy. Donald Prescott the same way. And even when I should see Junior Taylor over there, Pee Wee. I thought Pee Wee was original Oaks, but then I found out later on he was from Lantana. But he used to be over there every day. Like again, I said, if you wanted to be in confrontation, you want to fight, you want to pick a fight, whatever, you need to be over in the Oaks Park neighborhood, because just right across the street was the Pyrus. And it wasn't hard to find them. It wasn't hard to find you. So any given day, it can go down, or it can be peaceful. I remember Beverly Butler, Jimmy Butler's sister. She walking. She was a nice looking young lady and everything. Tookie and Marcellus pulled up on her, and she was afraid of Tookie. She told me, I talked to her about it. She's afraid of Tookie, but at the same time, she knew that how did she deal with something like that? Because if she dealt with it the wrong way, and then her brother because Jimmy Cash wasn't no punk. Jimmy gonna do what he had to do, and it took he pushing up on his sister, and rightly so, man. He rushed around there and ran up on Tookie, and Tookie clipped him, knocked him out. But that didn't stop him. He got up, dusted himself out, went back home, and got that goddamn it, and came back and shot my homie Crazy Mike in the nuts. Yeah, sure did. It's Crazy Mike didn't, he didn't bleed out or nothing, but yeah, it was, right there. Boom. Like, wow. But that initiated a whole nother beef, because now you got that situation that united something. You got the Ray Johnson stuff united something, because so it's always going to be a back and forth. It's like ping pong. Boom. Kick the ball back and forth like soccer, but, be smart. Give yourself your chance. Give yourself a chance to advance and grow and do something better. Move on, But how many of us think about that? When you, like I say, when you fight monsters, be careful you don't become one. And that's what it was. It was a lot of people fighting monsters, but they wasn't being careful that they didn't become a monster, And then slowly but surely it became so cancerous that you start seeing, when the 80s came, the 80s changed everything, the dynamics about Pyrus and Crips. And the reason why is because it was money. There was relationships established because of money. I seen Randy McQuiller, Anthony Atkinson, Stutterbox, and other people because of money now doing business behind the scenes. with Turtle and anybody else that's, engaging in this, right? And I remember Randy told me just clear, man, come by the house. I said, Randy, I ain't coming over there, man. He said, man, it's all right, man. He told me on San Marcos, all the way down at the dead end, the greenhouse, he come to the little house in the back. I said, hey, Randy, man, come on, man. He said, man, I'm telling you, good. I listened to him, went over there, showing up. We did our little business, and it was all out there. But like he said, true to his word, they didn't say nothing. And that stuff right there is what started creating animosity within their own neighborhoods, because now you got individuals with money making decisions, but not necessarily discussing it with everybody. There's always going to be some dudes on the side that's going to be like, F that, forget that. No, I ain't going for it. Come over here, I'm busting. I don't care. On blood, on cuz. You gonna always have those individuals, and that right there, when the money came into play and the drugs came into play, is when you start seeing people that was from the same neighborhood down in dues within this, because the guys with the money now can pay somebody, say, man, dude is really becoming a wrinkle over here, man. I know he a down dude, but we need to get him out the way. And he'd be gone. And this started happening, this started happening in all neighborhoods. I ain't singling out one neighborhood with this, but this started happening in all neighborhoods. Yeah, Big Doug was definitely Doug was my guy, man. I remember Doug took me on the west side. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so yeah, this started happening in all neighborhoods. The money and the drugs. Now you got more drugs, you got more money. You can buy more guns, you can buy more bullets, and you can have things done because you got the money, you got the clout, the power, and the money. So now you moving pawns around, you moving chess pieces. But a well-placed pawn can be more powerful than a king and a queen. A well-placed pawn. So now you got guys with big money taking pawns and placing them in the right position and letting them know all they doing is, and it get done, right? And you be trying to figure out, man, what happened to such and such, man? Man, I think such and such came through. Such and such. So they start blaming. Then you start seeing dudes, that be from one neighborhood, in order to throw their own homies off, they might put on red rags or they might put on blue rags. And then they get their man. This started happening all over. This is what happened to the culture. The culture it became so cancerous, it started imploding from the inside. So by the time it started hitting Texas, Tennessee, and New York, and New Jersey, I mean, you guys didn't know all that at first. But now that the internet is here, the internet is revealing all that. Now you guys should be feeling pretty bad about accepting all this stuff and then adapting it to your own. I mean, I don't know what y'all should have been or how y'all should have carried it, but y'all should have never took up on this Crip and Blood stuff. Should never. I mean, because the Crips and Bloods was going to your towns and selling drugs and moving weight or whatever, but all the time they was lying to you. You didn't even know their real names. They was lying to you. They sold you pieces of what Crips and Bloods is about. They didn't give you the whole pie. Yeah, it's a sad situation, man. It's a very sad situation. When you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, and you see that all these guys was friends, See, because if you look at that first resurrection, I'm talking about the first set of Crips and Pyrus or the Hoovers or even anti-Crip gangs, most of them were friends. They were friends. But it was disagreements and the fact that when Raymond created the Crips was, their mantra was Crips don't die, they only multiply. So now they throwing their weight around, they beating people up, taking leather jackets, kicking people, taking people money, doing all kind of stuff. Everybody ain't finna go for that. Everybody ain't no punk, ain't nobody no poop butt, as they would say back then. We ain't no poop butts over here. Y'all ain't finna come over here and take nothing. Y'all gonna take this 38 special I got for you. So that's just like when Puddin jumped out. Puddin shot my homeboy Chili Pimp. That bullet went straight across his head, put that hole in his head and put a crease across his head right there. Chili Pimp was mad. Chili Pimp was from Chicago. He was a Black Stone Ranger out of Chicago that became an Oaks Park businessman. Very down Chili Pimp, man. I love Chili Pimp, man, because Chili Pimp had a style that was just out of this world. If you had known Chili Pimp, any of you guys had met Chili Pimp, man, y'all would have been like, yeah, Chili Pimp gonna be in it. Because he had that Chicago stroll. I can't get that stroll that he had it. You know, like he was like a pimp, gangbanger, gangster, disciple wrapped up in one. he wore the fedoras, and he had the leather jacket with the belt tied around it like a gangster. You know, like an Al Capone or something. Bam, with the fedora broke down, and he had that baby cannon. He called it a baby cannon, sawed-off shotgun. I never seen a shot. He sawed-off shotgun too. I said, man, that's too short. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. I didn't tell him that, but I'm like, in my mind, it's too short. You know, I ain't got no voice over there. You know what I mean? All I had to do was think to myself at that part, you know, because 14, 15 years old, you know, you ain't got a lot of say-so with 19 and 17 and 20-year-olds. You ain't got a lot of say-so with them. They looking at you trying to figure out why you even here. But like I say, you breaking in houses and stealing cars and doing roof jobs. Yeah, they in for that. They in for that part. But again, man, if I look, I don't know. I don't know if Peabody's still living. I don't know if Wino, Tonell, Duck, Shorty. I don't know if Andrew. I know Gary Stewart caught a lot of time in prison. He's been in prison forever. You know, when his homegirls told on him, then because Pomino, well, Lynnwood Crips went to POP, which is Pominoke and Pine, and then from Pominoke and Pine to Pominoke. And the Pominoke came because Gail and lived on Pominoke, and the Turtle and Gangster and Twins and all them was over there hanging out. And that's when, you know, they was really, really, really tight back then. We was really tight, you know. And Swallow them lived across the street. Yeah, so yeah. There was a lot going on, man. It's a lot. It's a lot, man. And as I look back, man, thinking about some of the people I met, you know, and some of the characters, you know, it's like I saw Rebo in Rebo heydays. I'm talking about, and then when I saw him sick and with cancer had just riddled his whole body, it was like it was hard to even accept that this was Rebo. How could Rebo? How could this stuff get Rebo? You know, that's what I'm thinking to myself. Johnny Jones, how could it get Johnny Jones? You know, how? These dudes was bigger than life. You know, these dudes was like extreme hardliners. Extreme hardliners. Then you see people like Killer Carl. You saw Catnip from the Grandies, Head Honcho from the Grandies. You saw Michael Redman, Red Dog, Salty Frosty. You know, you saw all these people, King Neen, Doug, you saw Big Booby, you saw Bitter Dog Bruno, Half Pint Bruno, Marcellus. And it's just, when you saw them, you like, wow. They was like, they was superheroes in the neighborhood. If you want to put it in those terms. But at the same time, as years went by, life started changing. People started deteriorating. And then you see how life in itself, the type of lifestyles and people engaged and indulging in was bringing them down. People going to parties, staying up all night long, drinking all night long, smoking whatever they smoke, just being overly indulgent in a lot of different things. Then you get my homie Curtis Patrick committed suicide. But again, like life is a game of boomerangs. Sooner or later, your words, your actions, your inappropriate behavior, your deeds, and everything is going to come back and hit you with astounding accuracy. If you out there, you committing murder, and you think that at some point this thing ain't gonna fall back on you, yeah, it's gonna hit you. It might even hit your family. But people don't look at that. They just do what they do, and then they don't think about the consequences. What is the cause and what is the effect? They don't necessarily look at it that way. And then when it comes back, when it comes down, it's like, man, devastated. No, Tookie didn't start none of that. Tookie was just the face of Crippin' at that time, bro. I gotta correct you on that. Tookie was the face of Crippin', and he was like a advocate of it, and he was like the superhero of superheroes. I remember Alvin Whiteside came in and slapped up one of the homies. And Tookie wrote about this in his book. He slapped up one of the homies, jumped in his car and peeled off. Tookie happened to come through. Tookie pulled up, asked the homie what happened. And he told Tookie what happened. Tookie just jumped in his car. He didn't say nothing, just jumped in his car. Went straight over there, found Alvin, and grabbed Alvin, grabbed him by the neck, the throat, and just was holding, lifted him and slapped him. Bah! Slapped the dog out of him, But Alvin was like, I don't know why Alvin was like that. He was a bully, Some dudes was bullies, some, not everybody. Some dudes were bullies, You don't know why. Even like when I forgot about Pretty Crip. Pretty Crip was in the Red House too. My boy Guy Walker used to go with Sally. Forgot about Guy. Damn, just remember. I can't remember keeping him. Really, are you familiar with OG Santa Claus, known as? Yeah, I knew who Santa Claus was, but he's younger than I am. But I'm familiar with who he was. But that just again that comes down. Okay, here we go. Super chat. What is that at? Let's see. What does it say? Let's see. Do you know G from Luda's Park? Yeah, I'm aware of who he is. I'm aware of who he is. He's a younger generation than I am, but I'm aware of who he is. Yeah, but Santa Claus, man, again, it comes back to the life as a gang of boomerangs. You can only be gang banging is like a nanosecond of your life. You can't be overly indulged or engaged in gang banging every day and all day and every weekend and all that. And something catastrophic don't hit you. It's impossible, bro. It's impossible. And if you are, more likely you somewhere in the graveyard, or you in a wheelchair, or you in prison. Those are what it is. Yeah, that's what they kind of do, bro. They kind of come in here and they'll listen and they won't. It's just a simple thing to press thumbs up. It's a simple thing. It'll definitely keep me talking, to keep me sharing this information, because I think this information is pertinent to you, because I want you to see not only just the rough side of it, but there was all some good moments in it, and how it came together and the reasons why it came together. There's many ways I can explain this, right? But you'll be surprised to that it wasn't all what you guys think it is, especially the out of town guys. It wasn't all what you guys think it is, you know. It's just not, you know. And I grew up, you know, in, matter of fact, I grew up right there by Enterprise behind on Aprilla. They're there for a moment. Then we moved on 135th and Avalon over to about 135s. And then from there, we moved to 421 West Rosecrans, which is in the fruit towns. Backside was Cherry Street. With Rosecrans, that's how I knew everybody from Fruit Town, the Bobby Cubers, the Emmett and Melvin Burts. I knew Bubba and Stanley Simon. I knew Marty, Duryea, Wendell. I knew Rodney Smith, Daryl Smith, Roger Haynes. I knew the Hamiltons. I knew the Hunters. I knew the Daniels. I knew everybody. I went to elementary school with all these cats over in Fruit Town. Then I met Strawberry and Monk and all them, and the Bernards, Debbie Bernard and Harvey Bernard and Donnie Bernard and, you know, the whole Bernard family. You know, went to school with all them cats. So it wasn't that difficult for me, you know, going to Dominguez. Only time anybody ever approached me if they didn't know me. The ones that knew me, they just, okay, that's Mel. You know, I'm with Nathan Mixon, Gangster Nate, Ricky Montgomery. Went to school with all them guys, man. Marvin Antoine Fly, Darwin, the Caldwells, Tony Black, Black Love. All of them is Fruit Town guys. Every last one of them. What up, Keith? Michelle, what's happening? Yeah, we in here chopping it today. I say, you know, because I come in here, guys, I could tell you guys a lot about, just give y'all my observable reality and personal opinion about a lot of this stuff. But at the same time, it's just my opinion. There's many opinions out there. But what I will say is that if they wasn't around in 72, 73, 74, they really can't give you a real, the origins, look at the origins or understand how that dynamic even transpired and fumbled into what it is today. See, I can do that. Not many people can do that. And I do mean fumbled. It was fumbled. The ball was fumbled. It was fumbled. Because if you think about what Raymond really wanted, Raymond wanted representation. He wanted somebody from the Crip side to be in the down there in the city hall, and so we have a seat at the table. He understood what resources and what it meant to have a voice at the table. So he understood that. Make no mistakes. The Raymonds, the Tookies, Marcelluses, Donald Duck Norwoods, the Killer Waynes, and a lot of these people, they weren't stupid. They weren't stupid. Leadership requires certain requirements. There has to be certain elements and certain components that calibrate what a leader is, right? And these guys had qualities, and they demonstrated these qualities that other men was willing to follow. I mean, boys and teen and young guys, of course. And I'm not trying to justify the actions, but what I am saying is that people just don't follow people like that if they don't know that they, that they had a back. You know how it was when my homeboy T-Bone got shot? He got shot by the dude from the Swans. He had a yellow Volkswagen. I believe they called him Mad Cookie Man. And he later on lost his life. But anyway, you know how many people came together when that happened? I know you guys can't imagine it, but in my mind, I'm picturing it. When it happened, I'm right there with him when he got shot. But the next day, when somebody got shot in the neighborhood, the next day there was a beating, and everybody would converge, convene, and you would have all kind of Crips from everywhere, and they would think it out, put together, and execute. Think it out, put together, and execute. Also, I want to give a shout out to my guy. He rest in peace. Tall Joe from CV70s. Tall Joe. When I met Tall Joe, he was the cousin to Robert Rivera, Marianne Rivera, and Gloria Rivera. They live exactly across the street from me. And Tall Joe should have been a poker player because he had a poker face. He was tall, and he was just a down essay. I'm talking about down. But critical thinker, and a money machine. And he didn't let white supremacist talking points and all this stuff that seeped into the Mexican mob. And that might have been the problem with why he lost his life. I'm not sure. I'm not for sure about that. But he was always figuring out a way how to increase the margin, how to make more money, how to expand and do that. And he got into the water game. He was one of the few essays that got into the water game. He was way more successful than that Ponson. My guy is Bones from over there. Bones, everybody know Bones from CD70. They all was, doing anything. But Tall Joe, yeah, he was the guy over there. So I just wanted to I know it didn't have nothing to do with what I was talking about. I was just thinking about him. I was thinking about him the other day, and I called my brother and asked about, and we talked about Tall Joe. But Tall Joe was a real good dude, man. And right next door was Ralphie, Danny, Lisa, Jesse James. My other guy, he was from, what was he from? Watts Wiggins. Him and Shorty used to be there. Kicking it. Junior and Shorty from Watts Colonial Watts, Wiggins Street. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, we right there. Then down the street was Jap from CV3, Frito from CV3, then Puncho and Droopy, CV3, the Camachos, and then brother Cochise. Just, yeah, man, I don't know how other people perceive this or look at this, but them relationships were tight, bro. It ain't like what you guys think. I'm telling you, it's not what you guys think. This new generation, this bro, everybody's a nigga and all that, and the girls are niggas, they bros and all this stuff. I don't get into that stuff. But anyway, I appreciate each and everybody that joined us on this chat, and we'll continue to build on it. And as I go back into my mind and theater of my mind, and I'll bring up these episodes, we'll talk about it in a way that we can talk about it. But at the same time, we ain't gonna send nobody to jail. That's just it. And that's the key right there. Being able to talk about situations, because here's the thing, when somebody's passed or dead, you can pretty much say whatever you want to say about that, right? But if they're still living, nah, you can't say if they did this or did that. Nah, just can't do it. No matter how bad people want to hear it, you just can't. But once again, I am Professor Melly Mel, the Hood Pulse Man. Don't mind me. Just watch it. Well, church moving. Well, go ahead and lock that door. Church.
Cali Finest, baby. Proof of grind all the time. Music money. Got a dollar sign. Hub City. I'm a street nigga, streets fuck with me. I'ma keep pushing products till the feds get me. It's guap off top, diamond Cartier. That nigga wall won't give a broke bitch the time of day. They see me climbing, they see me shining. That's hard work, proof of grinding. New money got me tipping in that 550. I lead bad man and I'm so pretty. I got that tech with me, that's my hater sprayer. Go big, grind now, nigga, play later. What can I say? I'm addicted to this paper stacking, and I don't talk about it, I just make it happen. Word on the block is that my shit go. Bricks for the low.
Lock the door, because we are gone.